Hi, I'm Jonathan Fields with another episode of Good Life Project. So my guest today is Vani, who started something called Food Babe, which has become sort of a global movement to really go deep into exactly what's going on with our food supply and do a lot of investigation and revealing, and she's become a really powerful advocate in a stunningly short period of time. So it's so awesome to be hanging out with you.
You too, Jonathan. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm fascinated by what you're up to on so many different levels, both as an entrepreneur, as somebody who cares about what we fuel our bodies with, and as somebody also, there's a different level, as somebody who's kind of like really fascinated with citizen journalism and investigation, and how that dynamic is changing in a profound way right now, and there's so much power that's shifting to individuals. So I'm excited to explore all these different things with you. Tell me, and I want to take a step back and explore your journey also, but just like give me a bit of a thumbnail of what Food Babe is so people can really understand what you're up to.
Sure. You know, I started Food Babe out of passion, of telling the people around me what's really in their food. And they wanted to know, my friends and my family wanted to know what I did to transform my health. And, you know, several years ago, I suffered some really serious health consequences due to the lifestyle that I was living. I was living the typical rat race, working in corporate America right out of college, and I let kind of my whole being go, and I just let the corporate kind of world take over me. And basically, I did what all of my coworkers were doing, eating all of the fast food and the catered meals and being on the expense account and traveling for work. You know, I didn't understand that I was going to need to develop habits to take care of myself. You know, I was just, you know, a young 20-something girl just trying to be successful. And so I didn't understand that I really had to develop habits to do that. And so it caught up with me really quick. I gained an enormous amount of weight. I had appendicitis, had a emergency appendectomy a few months after starting that job. And I was in the hospital room recovering, and it was December, and it was like a festive season. I remember all I wanted to do was like go to the mall and like buy a present for somebody, and I couldn't do it because I was like sick in the bed. And so I like made that decision. That moment was like so like important to where I am today, because I just said to myself, like, health is my number one priority. I'm never going to allow this to happen again. And in January, I started like channeling all this crazy energy that I learned in high school, which was to research. I actually quit the cheerleading team to join the debate team. And I spent my summers at Dartmouth College going to debate camp. And one of the topics one year was healthcare. And so I learned all about the healthcare industry and what was really happening, what was causing disease. And, you know, some of the things I researched touched on food, but I didn't really understand the connection until much later in life. And so I channeled all of that energy and that knowledge that I had to research. And I started researching what I did to my body during those months of agony that I was experiencing. And I figured out that there's all sorts of crazy things in our food. And I slowly started to remove them. And
so did you feel that the appendicitis and all that stuff was related to the way you were eating?
Oh, definitely. You know, it's so funny, like, you know, the doctors and everybody, you know, they were telling me, you know, appendicitis is something random. You shouldn't feel bad that you have it. You know, it's something that just attacks, and, you know, you just do it, and you don't need your appendix, and it's something you just get rid of anyways.
Right.
But, you know, that's part of your digestive system. And so what it means to have appendicitis is that you have an inflammation of the appendix. And if your body's inflamed, of course your digestive system's going to be inflamed with all the food and the nasty stuff that you're putting in it and not taking care of yourself and experiencing loads of stress and all these other things that, you know, equate to the really, you know, unhealthy body.
I think that's one of the, I mean, it's so interesting because I think what a lot of, you know, there's sort of fringes of medicine now, right? Like integrated medicine, where they're really exploring just this notion of systemic inflammation and how like all these things that we give names to as diseases may be in large part just sort of like the, you know, like the symptomology of just a bigger, more systemic inflammation that goes on in our body. And so many people are pointing back to food, the way we fuel ourselves, as one of the core sources of inflammation.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many inflammatory foods, right, that are like, you know, acidic forming in the body. So like things that totally like leach your body of nutrients, you know, all of the chemicals and the pesticides and the genetically engineered ingredients that we're eating, you know, all of those things cause inflammation. And if we start to eliminate those things, like what the body's capable of feeling and doing is just miraculous.
So you start to explore this for yourself.
Yeah.
Because you've just come out of the hospital, essentially. And you're saying something's not quite right, and mainstream medicine isn't giving me the answers. And also, I mean, probably make it clear also, not to just completely bash or knock the entire body of mainstream medicine. It's just there's this really interesting evolution of people looking for different answers and people just taking control. And what I think is so fascinating is how you basically said, I'm a researcher. I'm going to just dive into this.
Yeah, exactly. And the crazy thing that I found out when I started researching is actually how to heal my body naturally of all the ailments that I'd been covering up my whole life too. I'd grown up with eczema all over my face, all over my body. I had asthma. You know, I had certain disorders that were created from, you know, being in the corporate world, that doctors would prescribe me crazy drugs like Ambien, you know, to sleep at night because I was so stressed out. And I figured out how to get myself off of, you know, I was taking like 6 or 8 prescription drugs at one point in my life.
At the age of?
Like 22.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
And I mean, I got myself off all of that stuff because I was able to figure out like what I was eating that was causing this and what I was doing on a daily basis that was causing it.
I mean, also, and you brought up having eczema as a kid, which is, you know, it's one thing to have some condition which is internal, where you feel tired or pain or something like that, and that's a struggle and that's tough. But when you have something, especially as a kid, especially as a girl or woman, and it's something that people can see.
Yeah.
I mean, that's gotta be tough.
You know, there's this amazing trip that I took with my brother. He's 7 years older, and when I was 18, he says, "Vani, for your birthday, I want to take you to Europe, and I'm going to use all of my airline miles and hotel points. We're going to stay at some great places and we're going to go all over Europe." And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I remember being in Amsterdam with him and like we were eating out and we were taking pictures. And I remember not wanting to take pictures because my whole face was covered in eczema. And so I still have those pictures today. And I go back and look at them and it reminds me of like where I've come and how my outside appearance is completely transformed in relation to the way I'm eating and figuring out what's in my food.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing that now for over 10 years I've eliminated that eczema from coming back, all because of the way I'm eating.
Yeah, which is interesting because that's something you probably wouldn't have found out about unless you started doing what you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still probably be on those drugs right now, maybe even more. And that's, you know, one of the things that was really hard for me to understand was that when you go see the doctor and they give you a drug, that they're covering up a symptom. They're trying to get you to feel better. And that's what they're taught in medical school. They want their patients to feel better and to get better. But what it's really doing is covering up the root cause. And if we were to look more at preventative medicine and root cause analysis and try to alleviate those things, our world would just be a totally different place.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the big argument though, isn't it? Because, you know, and that's not new. So we've been for decades and decades. It's like, okay, if you actually take care in advance, like if you focus on the preventative side, the world would be profoundly different. Or, you know, like healthcare costs nationally would be a tiny fraction of what they are now. But we have an entire system which is built upon treating things after the case. And which is interesting because, and to a certain extent, I think you can't fault the system for that, because there's something about our psychology on an individual level which tells us that it's not like anybody has to be told, take care of yourself before you get sick. You know, it's like we all know that, but we don't. I had a really interesting conversation with Dan Ariely a while back. It's one of the first conversations we filmed for this. He's a brilliant behavioral economist, really gets into why people do what they do. We were talking about this idea of compliance, you know, both before, like complying with healthy behavior and healthy lifestyle behavior, and sometimes even after some major event. And we're talking about the fact that, you know, after if somebody has a coronary incident, a heart attack, then very often, like a huge percentage of those people will go and they'll do their cardiac rehab. But then like a year later, many of them, a lot, are back to the exact same lifestyle behavior that led them there because they don't feel the pain of what they went through anymore. It's far enough removed. What was interesting about Dan is he was burned in 80% of his body when he was 18 years old. So every day he has a visual reminder of what his lowest low is, and it allows him to sort of like, he sees every day how he needs to sort of like live. But there's this interesting psychology with people, and that, you know, I mean, maybe a certain extent of it, and this is a lot of where you come in, is you're like, knowing what to do on a preventative level, but so many people just don't do it.
Yeah, and they don't do it until they feel some type of anger or some type of hurt or something dramatic happens to them. And really the goal of foodbabe.com is to get people woken up before they get sick. Because I don't want them to experience what I experienced. You know, this whole healing journey, it took 10 years to figure all this stuff out and to get to this place. I want them to do it faster. And one of the key things that I like to talk about on Food Babe is how we've been duped as Americans and how we've been exploited by food companies using chemicals and ingredients that are in some cases banned in other countries, here in American food, but not in overseas food, that they sell the same exact product. And I think that double standard and that hypocrisy is what people get really upset about. And so they start boycotting these brands. You know, at least the people who, you know, the Food Babe army I've created, the people who not only care about what they're eating, but they care about what everybody's eating to do something about it. And that anger really fuels a lot of people. And then that justice, you know, just having justice, making sure that you buy and you vote with your dollars and you eat the most healthiest thing available or product on the shelf available is very empowering. And I really want that to come across. So there's a different motivation. It's not just the motivation to take care of yourself. It's the motivation of, I'm not going to let this company dupe me anymore.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, right? So it's like you've kind of said, okay, and we should, in case people haven't figured it out, I mean, Food Babe is huge. I mean, you created something, you know, like it's just foodbabe.com, right? So you've created something online which has become a bit of a global movement. You know, it's 2.5 years old now. And you started largely as, you know, like, let me start to get the word out about the truth about some of the things we're putting in our body. And it has exploded in an astonishingly short period of time. And but what's interesting about the tie into the conversation is that you've kind of like given people a different reason, a different why. So instead of, because like we were saying, like a lot of times I want to just take care of myself thing just doesn't get a lot of traction. But when you're part of a group that's, you know, like part of a movement or revolution to do something bigger, it's like it gives them a different why, and it sounds like maybe a more powerful one in a certain way.
Yeah, and when they see, you know, in black and white, the ingredient label of the same McDonald's French fries that are sold here in the United States and sold in the UK, and the UK doesn't have any bad chemicals in it, it's so hard not to do something about it, or to take action, or to take some personal responsibility and say, okay, I understand what those chemicals are now. I'm not going to put those in my body. And I think that's what's so powerful, is understanding the ingredients, understanding what they do to the body, and then understanding the higher meaning and the higher purpose of like really changing the marketplace.
So let's talk about you going from getting yourself well. Because not a lot of people would actually go to the levels that you did to do it just on a personal level.
Right.
But then you go to this next place where you're like, okay, I got a good job. You know, like it's killing me, but I've got a good job. There's a sort of prescribed path to say I'm going to blow it all up to do this. Talk me through that.
So, you know, what's so incredible, and one of the reasons I say, like, if everyone gets healthy and really understands like how the body works and eats the right things, like the world would be a different place, is because there's no way I would have ever been able to start Food Babe and work at the same time if my body wasn't feeling great and full of energy. I mean, I had more energy in my early 30s than I did in my early 20s. And how is that even possible? Your body's 10 years older. And so I, you know, met these groups of individuals that, would work with me, and they wondered why I was drinking my green drinks and why I was concerned about the MSG at the soup bar downstairs.
Because there's got to be a really big social element to why people don't do that too.
Yeah,
right?
Totally, because you have to ask questions and you have to put people on the spot and you have to, worry a little bit about where you're going to eat next, because, is it going to be a place that serves something?
Or like if you're at work, right, and there are work dinners or work functions.
Yeah, and you don't want to be the person who tells your boss, like, no, I'm not going to that place.
Right, it's like, hey, have some chips and salsa. Well, are they non-GMO chips?
Exactly.
And maybe now it's more commonplace, but when even a couple of years ago, it wasn't. So there's just like, I bet there's got to be some concern, like social stigma in work settings or just
definitely
interpersonal settings about making those choices publicly.
Right, it really is. And what my coworkers and the people managing me and everything saw was that, I kind of stuck out from the crowd because I kind of made these certain decisions when we would go out to eat of like how to order, or I would bring certain snacks with me to meetings, or, I would only go to a couple of different restaurants while I was like working in Detroit, for example. I was traveling back and forth there for almost 2 years. And this is when Food Babe was born. And it was just this momentum and the people surrounding me going, this is awesome information that you give us on a daily basis, because they were just asking why I was doing certain things.
Right.
And they said, why don't you start a blog? What do you think about that? And I had like an intervention from some friends. They're like, first of all, you need to get on Facebook, because you don't even know. I had never been on Facebook before I'd started Food Babe. And they're like, how are you going to spread your blog? You need to go on Facebook. And I said, okay, I'll go to Facebook. I was scared of Facebook and social media because my corporate world had always taught me, like, you don't want your boss finding your party pictures and, all of your personal information on the web. And so I was never on social media. I didn't have a Twitter account. I didn't have anything.
Right.
And so I started Food Babe in April of 2011. And I was coming up for a name for a blog, and it was the worst name in the world. And I yelled it out to my husband, like, can you buy this domain? It was like eathealthyandlivelong.com or something. It was really long. Mm-hmm. And he goes, that's a horrible domain. And he's a technologist. And I said, okay, well, help me come up with a good name for the blog. And he goes, what about Food Babe? And I remember we were in different rooms because he's yelling from the other room. And I'm like, gosh, okay, well, what do you think? And I was just, I was a little shy about calling myself a food babe, but that's what he thought I was. And so I was like, okay, I'll just go with it. And so...
have you taken any heat, like from women over the name?
Oh, you have no idea. I mean, you have no idea. And it's so funny that, I would have never self-proclaimed myself that if it hadn't been for him and my friends loving the name. Because, of course, I called everyone next and asked, like, what do you think about this name? And they're like, oh, we love it. And so because I still had a corporate job and I'm still working crazy hours, I gave up television during this time. It was Lent. I'm not even Catholic, but I gave up television for Lent so that I would have time and focus to work on the blog. And so that's how I found the time. And at the end of each blog post, because I was concerned, again, I had that same stigma of like sharing things via social media and publicly about my life and what I was eating. So I'd sign my blog posts Food Babe. So my name, Vani Hari.
So you were anonymous, sort of like behind
never,
it.
Yeah, it was never, and I never had my picture at the top of my blog. It was like these random cartoon drawings.
Right.
And, I never had my name ever on my blog ever until it started to blow up. Right. And I started to see the reaction of people and my friends and family who shared it with their friends and family, and it just started growing. And I couldn't hide any longer at one point. So
the name just kind of, it was what it was, and there are people who like it, there are people who don't like it, but it's certainly memorable.
Yeah, totally. And I think what really is interesting is that people say, how am I going to take advice from someone who calls themselves the Food Babe?
Right.
And it's just so sad that somebody would say that based on a label, and it just kind of reminds me that, don't judge something until you really understand it. You don't judge something by the cover of the book, you know?
So you start to post on your blog, and I want to say in the early days, but I'm like, this was like 30 months ago. So it's like, we're not that far from the early days, even though, like what you've done in Astonishing is remarkable. But in the early days, I mean, what's your prime goal at this point?
At this point, it is to create change. I really know that I was put on this earth to do this job, and I finally kind of allowed myself to do that. I quit my corporate job in January, actually end of December, on top of Machu Picchu, actually, on December 21st.
So until a year ago, you were working 2 jobs, basically.
Yes. And it was really difficult. I was running myself, crazy.
Right.
There was a point in November of last year that I go, hold on, I'm not even things that I used to do to take care of myself were slipping. And I go, wait a minute, I'm the food babe. I'm preaching this stuff. I have to walk this walk. Like, I can't allow my body to, to allow this mission to take over that. Health still needs to be a number 1 priority, and something has to go. And I came across Marie Forleo and a book that she recommended, Daniel Laporte's Fire Starter Sessions.
Yeah,
and I was reading this in Peru on my trip, and it was like, I was like, I'm ready. I'm going to do this. And I look over at my husband and I say, hey, I'm ready to do this. My contract's ending. I'm going to make this my full-time career. And he looked over at me and he's like, what have you been waiting for?
Were you surprised by that?
I was, like, there was no question of, hey, how are you going to help pay the mortgage? Or, none of those financial questions. It was like, this is your calling. You really need to do this. And I'll support you,
Yeah, I mean, that's so powerful also, I think, to have somebody who's riding along the journey with you that says, yeah, I don't know how it's going to end. You've got something secure now that you're walking away from, but this is kind of like what you're meant to do. So powerful. I've had a lot of conversations with people who don't have that. And I think it's one of the biggest pain points for a lot of people who are trying to go out there and start something that they feel is just so well aligned with who they are and what they want to do. So it's when you find that, when you have that in your life, it's such a huge blessing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so funny, even though I had, someone supporting me and to fall back on, help me swim. When I got back in January from my trip, and it was the first week that I didn't go to a job, that I didn't go have a boss, it was the weirdest feeling.
Oh,
I felt
was that
so,
8 years or so while you were sort of working for someone else?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually over 10 years that I was working for someone else. So, and it was really hard, and not getting a paycheck. And
welcome to the world of entrepreneurship.
and
you're like, what?
and that was just a really I remember being really scared in my skin and being very fearful for the first couple weeks, and then slowly but surely, I started getting connected to the right people to help me kind of make this happen, and things started to get really crazy in March when I started a petition to hold Kraft accountable for a double standard that they have with their Kraft mac and cheese product, where they took out yellow 5 and yellow number 6 in Europe, but not for us here. And these ingredients are petroleum-based, linked to hyperactivity in children, cause allergies, eczema, asthma, stuff that I could really relate to, because when I eliminated all those artificial dyes in my own diet, I saw my skin improve. And I got thousands of letters from parents.
So you basically you investigated this, and then you did a piece on it.
Yeah, and started a petition, and it currently has 350,000 signatures.
Wow.
And just last week, Kraft announced that they're starting to take out these dyes. And it's, getting a company to do something is a really hard thing, I can tell you, because I thought, it would just be like these signatures and this press and everything, but I had to go to Chicago and deliver the petitions, and I met with them, and they have one thing in mind, these corporations, and it's their bottom line. And until their bottom line starts to be affected, they're not going to listen. And so I had to develop crazy rogue campaigns on how to get people involved and how to get people to switch away from Kraft mac and cheese to another product, or just to make it from scratch. And one of the things that I saw that was really interesting is, Annie's, which is one of the popular alternative products, went up 14% last quarter. So I knew that we had shifted the marketplace. And when I knew that information, I knew the change was coming. So when I heard that announcement from Kraft, I just kind of was like, okay, it's time.
It's so powerful because so many people will say, I'm one person. What can I do? You know, and I'm going to have to like just throw my life against the machine and probably live, you know, hand to mouth, because people who are activists and crusaders, it's not about the money, and they generally don't live well. It's purely about the cause. And it's kind of like what you're building is showing that both of those assumptions may be pretty wrong, because one person really can lead to profound change, whether it's changing things in the food world or whatever that cause is that may be near and dear to your heart. But like one person can really make a difference if you're insanely motivated and you really understand how to use the tools to make it happen. But you're also building a business. So tell me about how it is, because it's fascinating to me to see how you balance the dynamic, being like a citizen investigator and journalist and an activist, and building a real business around that.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, it's so funny. When I started my blog, I said to myself, there will be no advertising on my blog. I'm not going to have any advertising. I'm like, that's crazy. And then I started realizing, okay, I'm in the negative. I'm in the red, supporting the blog, trying to, have enough servers to handle the traffic and all of this stuff that, behind the scenes that people don't really realize that you have to pay for. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to start doing a little bit of advertising, but I'm going to block all food and pharmaceutical ads, so I don't have to see those, which will be really great. And so I started doing that, and I started tinkering with that, and that still wasn't paying the bills. So I had to figure out what is the most honest way that I can make money and support myself and allow myself to do these investigations and go hold companies accountable and go to their headquarters on my own time, and do all of these things and bring something back to the world. And so I said to myself, number one, I want to find the companies that are doing the right thing, and I want to partner with them, and I want to find out, I want to know their CEO, I want to be friends with their people. I want to go to their facilities and look at their products, make sure that they're doing what they say they're doing, so that anything that I recommend on foodbabe.com, I've completely vetted, and I know and trust that company. There's one company that I work with that, their main goal is to get Monsanto out of business. So when I know that that's their main goal, that sounds like a really good company for me to partner with. And so I do that, and then I also have created a product of my own that was the baby of basically, all of my friends and family begging me to make, which was a eating guide that allows people to just follow it with the shopping list, the ingredients, the meals, all laid out for them in a calendar, so they can just follow that each week and just like close their eyes, shop, get their stuff, make their stuff, eat it, and feel amazing.
And know that it's all clean.
Yeah,
right.
And know that it's organic, no genetically engineered ingredients, no processed chemicals, and uses the best nutrients on the planet. And so I partnered with a nutritionist to create that, and I just launched it in July. So up until July, I was really struggling, and just launched it in July, and it's doing fantastic. And people are really changing, and hearing the feedback from people has been incredible. Like I heard something yesterday that was just, I smile because I have a husband, and he's on board with the way I'm eating, but occasionally he likes his hamburgers and beer and chips and things. So it's just great hearing wives of husbands reach out to me and say, this plan is working for both of us. We can do this together, and just to see so many people influencing other people in their lives. And it's not just about them wanting to take control of their health, but they're making all this food for everyone in their household.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to see how you're sort of like looking, so you built this giant community, and you're serving them on one level with like, hey, here's the truth. What you do with it is kind of up to you. I'd love to see you actually take the truth and change your behavior so that you can live better in the world. But my goal is largely, here's the truth. Like, I'm going to investigate and bring to you what's really happening. And then there's this other goal of saying, okay, if that makes a big enough economic impact, then maybe we can actually change the behavior of some producers and manufacturers to bring us healthier stuff. And then on the same side, the business part of it is, well, then let me sort of like talk to this huge community that I built, who now I have credibility, have their trust, and see, okay, what's causing you pain? Like, how can I serve you? You know, and really going back to them and not just making up something or fabricating something to see, can I jam it down the throats of the people? But saying, what do you want that I can give you that would make your life easier? And just creating it and giving it to them. I think it's so fascinating to see this, right? Because it's an amazing example of flipping the traditional business model, which is create a product, put it out there, and market like crazy and hope it sells. And what we see happening now through social media and through the online world, is that we can build a community first. We can serve them in a really powerful way over an extended period of time. And then the community is there. You basically, instead of just having to guess and invest and hope and pray that you can create something that'll work and serve them, you build the community first and then just ask, what do you need?
Yeah.
And then just give it to them. It's such a different paradigm for building a business.
It really is. And, you know, at the end of the day, you feel really great about what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, you wake up, like I wake up every morning and I mean, I just can't wait to get started. You know, I've sometimes hard time sleeping because I am so excited about the next day, about what I'm doing, you know, and it's that kind of voice that I have. You know, my name Vani means voice, that I hid for so long on the blog. But, you know, it's, I want to speak up about this stuff, you know. And you talk about how one person can do something, and if you speak up loud enough, things happen, you know.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I think it's a great message for kids to hear also. Do you do any speaking?
I do.
What kind of audience are you usually in front of?
All sorts of audiences. I do speaking at different health conferences. I speak at schools.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
To just have kids be exposed to some of the work you're doing.
Yeah.
To get them earlier in life.
Definitely.
Pretty powerful. So where are you going from here? Which is kind of funny, because if I asked you 2.5 years ago, would you be here right now? What would you have said?
I don't know. I don't think I would have been here. Like, I just, you know, I didn't know where I was going. I just kind of live in the moment. So, you know, I don't try to plan too much in the future. Everyone was asking me, even last night, what's your 5-year plan? Where do you want to go? What's your next step? And, you know, I'm just trying to execute today. You know, I'm just trying to do what I need to do today. And, you know, I'm planning on writing a book that hopefully will continue to expose the food companies for what they're doing and give people the actions on how they can do to, you know, take control of their own lives and their own health. And I want to continue on with Food Babe TV that I just launched in the fall, and continue to educate people in a really fun and interactive way. And I want to reach as many people as possible, you know, and that part is really important to me, because I want to reach the people that haven't been sick yet, and I want to get to them so they never ever have to feel bad. And that is really the mission of what I'm doing.
Yeah, so it's almost like your why is kind of evolving a bit as you get further into what you're doing. Very cool. So the name of this is the Good Life Project. So when I offer that term to you, to live a good life, what comes up?
Once you know what you're put on this earth to do, and you find your calling, getting to do it is definitely the good life.
I like that. Challenge is always figuring that piece out.
Yeah.
But amazing to be able to figure it out and then live it as your vocation. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So I'm Jonathan Fields. My guest today has been Vani from Food Babe, and signing off for Good Life Project.